That's another excellent transition to the fourth leg of the stool. We talked about sleeping, we talked about eating, and we talked about training. The next component to that is going to be your medical status. It's going to be your blood testing and whatever necessary hormonal interventions you may need to optimize your fitness. Or medication if you've got high blood pressure or low thyroid, hypogonadism, testosterone. Whether or not you're going to need to do some sort of medical intervention for abnormally high familial hypercholesterolemia. You get a blood test for that. Look at your lipids if your LDLs are out of whack. You said something interesting there. Do we intervene first with the medical, or does some of the lifestyle help with those problems? I believe you start with lifestyle. I believe you get a blood test first. Let's get a baseline. Let's figure out where you're at. And so that we know whatever we're doing, we can measure whether or not it's having the necessary effect. So blood test is first. And then I said this in my Iceland seminar some 7 years ago. It's got almost 7 million views now, where I went up to Iceland and Hafthor Bjornsson did a presentation up there. It's 2 hours long. I go over every detail of the vertical diet. And as I mentioned, there's some things in there I would probably deliver differently, but it was a specific audience of bodybuilders, powerlifters, and strongmen. But I said, look, hormones have a huge impact on your ability to lose weight, say your hypothyroidism, on your ability to gain muscle, whether it's hypogonadism, and then just general health. So get the blood test, and then start to implement a lifestyle plan. Reduce the saturated fat, reduce your calories, get some weight loss, exercise regularly. Start with the walks and a couple of visits to the gym a week. Try and optimize your sleep, and now we're talking sleep apnea. If that's another medical consideration, if you're holding your breath and snoring at night and waking up tired, you might have some degree of apnea, and that's an intervention that is most likely benefited from weight loss. So you might try lifestyle first there as well. But if you can't remedy apnea, that'll have a huge impact on your blood pressure, on your blood sugars, on your energy levels, and you may need to get a CPAP to resolve your sleep apnea. Go hard for 30 to 60 days, and be consistent, trying to optimize your sleep and your nutrition and lose some body fat. I said on the Tom Bilyeu podcast that 95% of health benefits are realized strictly from weight loss itself, irrespective of diet. And I was skewered on social media for it, but it is a fact, and it's researched very well. And I said I would never recommend the McDonald's diet, but even with the McDonald's diet, we see improvements in biomarkers like blood pressure and blood sugar and lipids from weight loss. And I would not recommend a McDonald's diet for a number of reasons. Hard to comply with in terms of satiety, micronutrient deficiencies, potentially high in saturated fat, ultra-processed foods, etc. But if you can lose weight on any diet, you can realize health outcome improvements. Try and lose the weight, try and sleep a little better, try and exercise consistently, and then get another blood test 60 days later. And look at the markers that were out of range that you were concerned about. How much improvement did you realize from that intervention? And now if 60 days later or 90 days later, whatever time period it takes you to have a substantial change in your body weight, if you're 20, 30 pounds overweight, what we see in the literature is a 7% weight loss. It seems to be a pretty good initial driver of these health benefits. This is some of the research from the diabetes in particular. You can resolve about 50% of your NAFLD, non-alcoholic fatty liver, and dramatically reduce your blood sugars. Of 15% weight loss. Now, this is what I tried to accomplish with some of my athletes. If they're 300 pounds and you lose 45 pounds, a 15% weight loss can reverse type 2 diabetes for those people who already don't have pancreatic failure. You can restore pancreatic beta cell function with about a 15% weight loss on average, irrespective of how you lose it, I hate to say. But that can be pretty dramatic. So plug that number in if you're particularly compromised in terms of your metabolic health from your excess body fat. If you have elevated HA1C, fasted blood glucose, fasted insulin, high triglycerides, that's a great number to shoot for. If you're a 300-pound person, lose 45 pounds. How long does that take? At 1 to 2% body fat loss per week. You're looking. You can do that in 60 days, thereabouts, 60, 90 days. So go hard on that. Make that your goal. Lose that 15% if you can get there. 7 would be great. Get a second blood test, call it 90 days, see what's improved or hasn't improved. And if you still have hypothyroidism, you might need to see a doctor and find out if you've got Hashimoto's, or if you have some autoimmune disease. If you still have low tests, maybe you got to go in and have a doctor find out what type of testosterone deficiency you have and why. Remedying those problems does have a significant impact on your health markers. Thyroid has a huge impact on lipids. If your LDL is significantly elevated and your thyroid's, you've got high TSH, meaning low thyroid, fixing that could fix the LDL. If you've got low testosterone, fixing that, maybe you have to get on testosterone therapy, could have a significant effect on your lean body mass and your ability to have the energy to want to go to the gym. And so those things become rewarding and more likely for you to comply with long term. So those are just some primary, some preliminary examples. LDL would be the other major one, other than blood sugars and blood pressure and testosterone and thyroid. Some people are hyperabsorbers of cholesterol and may not be able to eat eggs. About 20% of the population will convert esterified cholesterol into blood cholesterol and raise LDL. And some people, from whether it's from familial hypercholesterolemia or from insufficient clearance of cholesterol or too much saturated fat consumption, reducing the LDL receptors in the liver, may recirculate cholesterol to such a degree that they've got elevated LDL or ApoB, and might have to eat even less saturated fat or avoid eggs or increase fiber or a combination of all of those. And if lifestyle doesn't work, then you may be a candidate, depending on your other risk factors, and maybe a CAC scan or a coronary angiography to look for soft plaque in the arteries. You may be a candidate for some medical intervention, which doesn't necessarily have to be statins, because we have ezetimibe is a cholesterol-lowering medication that's not a statin. PCSK9 inhibitors are extraordinarily effective. They're not a statin. So if you have an aversion to try statins, but nowadays the statins have evolved to where they have a lot fewer side effects, and they can use low-dose combo therapy as recommended by Dr. Tom Dayspring. An ezetimibe rosuvastatin combination in very low dose, incredibly effective. Lane Norton has used, maybe is still using statins because he couldn't get his LDL down under 130, and he eats 60 grams of fiber a day. He's huge on fiber, and eats a low saturated fat diet, but genetically he's just unable to get his LDL down. Dr. Soko, who's a PhD exercise phys, Dr_SOKO on Instagram, uses a PCSK9 inhibitor and has his LDL cholesterol down in the 50s or 60s, similar to what you were when you were 8 to 12 years old. And we see evidence that with the Mendelian randomization, that people whose cholesterol is in the 50s and 60s and below, their ApoB in particular, never acquire atherosclerotic plaques, and will go their whole life without that being a potential factor for cardiovascular disease. So that may be a longer conversation, but I'm just saying that you hit on an important point. Get a blood test, use your lifestyle interventions, maximize those, get a subsequent test, see a doctor if you need medical intervention to address any of the other issues.